Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to hear part 2 of this presentation. The first part was so excellent, and I have high hopes for this one. And again, I would like to thank Christine Westerlund, who works with several nonprofit groups, and she has presented this information for a lot of different people. And this is an area of special interest for her. And she is also a trustee at the lovely Chatham area library as well. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Christine, and let's hear it from an expert here. Thank you, Christine.
Well, thank you, Anna. I'm so happy to be here with you all. And we are continuing our discussion from our last session, examining equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think these are important conversations to have. And I think we really need to lean into this. And I say that with, lean is one of the words that we hear quite a bit these days. But I think by leaning into it, that really means we're trying to immerse ourselves and understand this is a slower process, that we just overnight do not become, EDI experts. And full disclosure, I probably said this the last time, I'm going to repeat it once again. I am from a small farming community in central Illinois, and this was not my experience growing up. I had to immerse myself in this when I was initially graduated from college. My first job was with the state of Illinois with an amazingly diverse work crew. And it was such a great learning experience for me. And I still reflect on and still am friends with many of those folks during that time, although I have moved on in my career and many of them have as well. But it really allowed me to kind of think through and have conversations, real conversations, so I could learn much more than what I learned in my small farming community. Now, that's not to be dismissive of my experiences growing up, but I also learned that the world is much larger than I thought it was. And so having these conversations, kind of digging into this, is really, I can't emphasize not only the value to the work that we do, but the value to ourselves. So I'm going to start once again with this. I ended the session last time with this quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And this is kind of this Ubuntu, if you are familiar with African culture, is that our humanity is bound up in yours, that we can only be human together, and reminding ourselves that we are 99% genetically alike. And we often forget that. And as my good friend and mentor reminds me, that race is a construct that was brought forward, several hundred years ago. And we still wrestle with these differences that we see, but underneath all of us, we all, aspire to be human together. So having said that, let's kind of just take a quick look at our flow today. We're going to really, we didn't really touch on this the last time, and I wanted to bring it forward, but examining microaggressions, this happens frequently. I know that I think it was a couple of years ago, I decided just to take one day and count how many microaggressions that I was exposed to in the course of that day, and I was stunned at the amount of those microaggressions. So we'll talk briefly about that. We also want to connect EDI to cultural competency. And I think that's really a key piece of this, is to really kind of be very, not just aware of EDI, but to really become competent and, really have that capacity to think through, to listen in, as I said, to lean in, and to really understand, not only the value this brings not to our lives personally, but also professionally. And that also means that we have to consider respect and civility. That's something that, honestly, I think in many ways we have been given license to be uncivil, that we may not show respect. We certainly are not doing our share of good listening in many ways. And so we want to be very mindful of that. I also want to talk a little bit about an organizational cultural assessment. And this is a key piece to really understanding within the context of your library, what is our culture like? Do we have that type of culture in place so we can provide programming and materials and all the things that libraries bring to communities? So that way we're understanding not only what we look like on the exterior, but how is it that we're functioning in the interior? Reflect for a moment on community served. Also examining processes, policies, and perspectives. I think that's a key piece to this. Change when and where needed. One thing that I value the most about libraries, and I will say growing up in that small community, that rural community, that is where I hung out at. 90% of my free time was at our local public library. So I could have that exposure to the world. And I also know that that library, which still is in existence, has changed dramatically in the way that they provide services in their community, just like all of you have. And then finally, I wanted just to kind of do this touch point at the end when we think about how libraries are really leading the way to inclusion and belonging. And belonging is really an important part of the work that we do. I didn't really bring him forward in this presentation, but there is a professor, he's at UC Berkeley, John A. Powell. His name is all in lowercase because he feels that that is the way that he should present himself culturally to all of us, and he explains it beautifully. So I would recommend that you take an excursion to his website, which is the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley. And there's quite a bit of material there that really helps us understand the value of belonging and when it is it sometimes when we're othering. And that is what a microaggression is, by the way. That is a moment of othering. So once again, to remind ourselves that diversity is really having that seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And belonging is that voice is being heard. So let's focus on that. Again, if there are questions that pop up, please feel free. I have a couple of slides where I'm going to pause and have you pop into chat some of the things that you're doing so we can kind of learn together. Let me go back just one here. I skipped a slide just to kind of give us kind of up to date where we were at. Maybe some of you weren't on the last time, but giving some historic context of how did we actually get here? How did we get to these conversations? The use of windows and mirrors, that is meaning a moment of reflection, not only about our experiences, but seeing what's out in the world around us. So we can kind of take pause and truly dig into what we witnessed, what we have read about, what we have certainly over the past 2 years has been astonishing, the things that we have been exposed to, and to really think about what that might mean. We also talked about examining bias. Certainly there are, two basic types of bias. There is very explicit bias, which, that's what we hear and see that on display. But there's also implicit bias because the way that we have learned things or have gained, again, through our culture, we have to be very mindful of that implicit bias. There was a link, or I believe I suggested that you could go to the Harvard's implicit bias website and to test for yourself to see where you hold bias. And, a spoiler alert, all of us have bias. Talking about moving towards diversity and what exactly does inclusion mean? So let's start here, though, with microaggressions, because I think this is something that perhaps we have witnessed probably multiple times. Maybe we even let it roll off of us. We don't even notice it as much as we perhaps do sometimes. And it's really been interesting to me to take on this examination of language and perspectives. And, it's defined here. This is from Diversity in the Classroom, UCLA. This is, I think, one of the best definitions that I have found about this. So microaggressions are those everyday verbal and nonverbals and environmental slights, snubs, or insults. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, it communicates hostility, derogatory or negative messages, and it targets people based solely on their marginalized group membership. And I'm going to suggest that we've all been engaged in using microaggressions in our lifetimes. And that's not, I'm not condemning anybody for that. I certainly have. But I think when we recognize it, that means we have the opportunity to learn and hopefully to change. And again, the first step in addressing these microaggressions is to recognize when a microaggression has occurred and what message it may be sending to that individual. So the context and situation is critical because there is a relationship typically when that microaggression emerges. So some of the common things that we have seen, and just to put this out here, and again, this is just a moment for us to take this into account. We're not going to dive deeply into this. But some of the common phrases that we see in microaggressions are some of these, right? And I have to confess, there was one on this, and I picked this slide intentionally because there was one on this list that I have said to someone before. And I realized after I said it, almost the moment I said it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to take those words back, right? And that was, where are you from? I believe myself to be a naturally curious person, but at that moment, I thought perhaps I was just being polite and kind and asking them where they are from. And I realized later that could certainly be perceived, by say, well, it's obviously you're not from here. There's something different about you. And that's a microaggression. And, I honestly, I didn't know it for some time until I was in a class and we were talking about microaggressions and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had to take it upon myself to apologize to that individual because I thought it was important that I say I was wrong. My intention was just to create conversation, to get to know you, and I took the wrong direction. So forgive me if you can. But we kind of do these toss-offs from time to time whenever we're meeting someone new, someone who perhaps is not a part of our culture, someone who is not a part of who we see every day. And so we may say things like this. And just to, do this work on yourself, to think about, have I said this? Certainly, one of the most common things that we heard, certainly when George Floyd was killed, people started saying, goes back also to the young man in Missouri, in which, Black lives matter. And then people started saying all lives matter. But when we see the preponderance of Black lives whose lives are taken away from them so quickly through violent means, all lives matter is a microaggression. I would say it's probably a macroaggression. So just placing this in your thinking. And here's the thing, is that we are complex people and our culture is complex because of that. And we have to be very clear of who we are and whose we are. And also because of who we are, especially in this profession, in which we have the pleasure and opportunity to interact from people from all walks, that culture is something that we need to lean into. Again, and you'll see here, so we're kind of starting building up. What makes up culture? What are some of these things that we know about ourselves, about others? What does that involve exactly? So we know that, in culture, that means that we're people, we're persons. So we have ethnicity, we have a belief system, we have traditions that we observe, we have diversity embedded in some of those, in that culture. And we also, because we are from somewhere, we may be from another nation, and there's a culture embedded there as well. So thinking about and we're going to go deeper into this because we want to see really and examine what influences us. How is it that we, take this daily walk in the world and interact in the world? And what is it that we're seeing and learning and maybe unlearning and relearning as we do this work together? So I'm going to bring back this windows and mirrors once again. And I want you to really pause and reflect on your culture. Where Where were you born? Where are you from? What is your ethnicity? What is your perspectives? Where did you learn some of this from? What did you learn this from, your parents or your grandparents, or perhaps a close friend, perhaps a beloved family member? But think for a moment about your culture. If you feel comfortable, you can pop something into the chat, but culture is very personal. Some of the perspectives that you hold, you may not want to share them. So we'll just pause here for just a moment. So culture is shaped. So we started kind of looking at this kind of in a macro perspective. Now we're going to kind of go meso and micro, in which how we'll see that culture is shaped and influenced by. So we see here in the middle of this matrix, this circular matrix, that it's our personality is shaped by all of these dimensions, right? So if we look, kind of initially in those internal dimensions, we see that we're influenced by our race, our age, our gender, our sexual orientation, our physical abilities, and our ethnicity. So, we fit into each one of these, right? And how we identify ourselves, what we know about ourselves. Hopefully, your age. Some days I'd like to forget mine, but that's another story for another time. So then that's internally. So as we build this out into external dimensions, then you have to think then is what's your geographic location? What's the income that in your family group? What are some of the personal habits and recreational habits that you have in place? What religion, if you choose to worship, what is that? What is the educational background? And I think too, this is all of this not only is just on yourself, but this is that whole family dynamic, whatever your family, whatever shape or type of family it is. What is the work experience, if there is work experience? What appearance? That's, we're constantly thinking about what people look like, right? What is your parental status and your marital status? Again, these are all pieces of these external dimensions that we take into account when we're thinking about shaping the culture that we're within. And then we build it out one more level into organizational dimensions. We look at functional level, how do we classify ourselves? Where is it we fit in at? A lot of that is defined by the work that we do, profession or any type of, something outside of the home, what that looks like. What is the content of your work? Are you part of a division, a department, a unit, or a group within there? What is your seniority? Are you a newbie? Have you been there for a few years? We were chatting before we started. Nobody stays around for a certain period of time. I grew up in a time which my father retired after with over 40 years with farm services. And I suspect now that rarely happens. What is the work location? Most of us, some of us are sitting in our homes working these days, in our apartments, or perhaps at our favorite local public libraries. Is there a union affiliation? We know that many of our workers are unionized. What is your status within management? Are you, somewhere in that hierarchy of the organization that you work within? So these are things that we have to think about. But there's other pieces of this as well. So I want you to really take a moment and consider how you learn about culture. And if you feel comfortable, plug that into the chat. There are so many dynamics in how we've learned about this, how we glean information, how we learn about ourselves and others.
Yeah, I love this wheel, Christine. It just, you know, you can keep going deeper and deeper as you look at this and really think about who you are at your core when you know, go through all these filters.
Yeah, absolutely, Anna. And, you know, I popped up the next slide with the same question there, because we really are shaped and influenced by history, geography, natural resources, economics, and technology. And I'm going to say technology should probably today be at the top of the list, because what device do you hold in your hand, you know, approximately 18 hours a day?
Mhm.
You know, so we have access to social media, we have access to, you know, a lot of us, including myself, we watch videos on our phones. You know, so we're influenced by music, by the movies and television shows that we watch. We're influenced by websites, we're influenced by social media influencers. That's, you know, that's a job title these days. Certainly economics plays a key role in this. You know, it's in this circle, but what is your salary? How is it that you're connected into the system? You know, what's available from a natural resources perspective? You know, do you have access to clean and potable drinking water, for example, or is that an issue in your community? And where we live is also a key piece of this in terms of geography. You know, do we have access to adequate transportation to get places? Okay, well, I know there's a lot of pondering going on about your culture, and that's good. I mean, this is something that we really do need to take into account. I will say just last night, my spouse and I were discussing culture and how we were influenced by something in a very positive way, and how that shifted the way that we perceive something. And again, this is, you know, we probably have these conversations and may not necessarily be aware of it. So let's think about culture definitions then, and maybe we need to go a little bit deeper into this. And this is actually taken from the American Library Association. This is their standards on diversity. And I thought this was one of the best definitions of cultural competence. And then I noticed it was from the National Association of Social Workers, which I hang out in that with those folks. But I thought this was just a really well-written definition, where it is a congruent set of behaviors, attitudes, and policies that enable a person or group to work effectively in cross-cultural situations. And you'll see that it has everything mentioned there that we know about, right? Cultures, languages, class, race, ethnicity, religions, and other diversity factors. But the language that I loved here is that in a manner that recognizes, affirms, and values the worth of individuals, families, and communities, and protects and preserves the dignity of each. And so here we see a definition about culture. We see a definition about diversity, a definition about globalization. That's certainly something that we have heard. That's a word that's been entered our vernacular probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I hear it most days now, where this idea of globalization, in which we're trying to integrate ourselves because we have the capacity to do that with, you know, our capacity to connect with one another using the internet. And because of our economic systems have changed so dramatically, in which, you know, we oftentimes don't even need to have, you know, cash money anymore, that we tend to move money around, you know, and Bitcoin is certainly a part of that. Non-fungible tokens is certainly a part of that. But how is it that we are interacting because of our more globalized world? We also know that there's multiculturalism, some multi-ethnic, there's this blending of these cultures, and how is that within a society? And it's no longer mainstream. It can become in a microcosm. And then what is multiculturalism? It is that policy or practice of giving equal attention or representation to the cultural needs and contributions for all groups in a society. That's kind of daunting when you think about it. But yet, this is the world in which we live. So how do we get to this practice of cultural competency? And again, I'm leaning into the work of Lorena Johnson, who I've spent many hours with her, not only participating in trainings with her focused on cultural competency, but also how is it that we can really deliver that message that in order to be fully human, to be fully engaged, means that we have to have this practice of cultural competency. And note that the word practice is there, because this is not something that you say, okay, I went to that class, I got a certificate, I am now culturally competent. That's not true, because culture is, in many ways, there is some fluidity embedded into culture. And we need to be very cognizant of that. So that's why we use communication pathways. How is it that we become more comfortable with communication? I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that is an area of struggle, because every one of us communicate and process information very differently. So we have to be creative, so that's where libraries, I think, play a key role in this. In storytelling, the use of parables, doing compare and contrast, visualization. I can't think of the number of times over the past couple of decades that I've heard, well, I'm a visual learner. How does that influence the work that I do? Well, I now do quite a bit of visual. I use a lot of visualization in trainings that I do. And how is it that you have to adapt methods for learning and sharing? And again, I think this has become really exciting for all of us, in which when we're working with one another, we're able to really figure out these adaptive practices. We're no longer didactic, we're adaptive. And I think that is really exciting. And then again, in this collaboration piece that we also do with one another, we have to think, who is involved? Do we have the right people involved? And this is one of the key pieces here in collaboration, and all of these in communication, creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking, that we have to really listen. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. And you may tell me that I'm on the wrong limb. Hopefully that limb will not bust. But one of the skills that we sometimes lose, certainly in cultural competency, is that we don't use good listening skills. That we tend to listen to respond rather than to contemplate or to consider. And if we're going to be in active communication, creativity, collaboration, using our critical thinking skills, it's that listening part that really means the most. People want to be heard. People value being listened to. But in our world that is so full of chatter these days and images, and I'm going to say those visualizations, that we sometimes lose the meaning and the context of what's being shared with us. That's a big step towards the practice of cultural competency. And then, of course, there's critical thinking, the use of reflective practice, pausing for consideration, in which there are opportunities to explore and discern. So this means, to me, that we have to slow down a little bit, even though we're being, bombarded with information streamed to us in a multitude of ways. But it's our capacity of being engaged in this work to understand, how is it that we're communicating? Are we getting there? Do we have to be creative in the way that we deliver the work that we do? Are we asking and talking to the right people? Are we listening? And are we reflecting? And this is something that you have to work at. I teach a class in which we spend quite a bit of time doing reflective practice. And I can tell that it is a struggle for some. And so thinking about reflective practice really I said leaning in, now you need to lean back and think, what have I learned? What have I gained about this culture? What am I hearing from you? What am I seeing? What is it that I'm understanding? And this is not necessarily, I'm not going to say a lot about this, but if you are culturally competent, you're moving towards that. That means you're gaining cultural clarity. And cultural clarity is that pathway towards respect and civility. And this is probably one of the key things that we need to consider. And it was Nehru who said that culture is the widening of the mind and the spirit. Again, thinking and leaning into this so we can be more civil with one another, which we don't have the capacity, to yell at one another, or we've been blocked by Facebook because we've said the wrong thing and we've been reported. And I'm on social media and I'm appalled at some of the things that are out there. And honestly, a couple of times I've actually been that participant. And then later I think, oh, that was a bad idea. So we have to be mindful of that respect and civility. So this is just a word cloud that I thought brought in some interesting words for us to consider with respect and civility. And the word that just totally flew out at me in this word cloud was empathy. And I think that's a key piece of this too, is, most of us probably consider ourselves to be empaths, meaning that we really try to, understand others and have empathy for individuals that we work with, particularly in libraries. But oftentimes we may lose our empathy because we have been persuaded by outside forces that have really, and some of it in our control and some of it outside of our control. So we have to think about that. But it's common courtesy. It's certainly being patient with one another, using those manners that you were taught, hopefully, to be open-minded, to have tolerance. Again, I think a lot of this goes back to listening, and to be kind. This is all, things that I believe we're all very good at, or we move towards, but also want to ensure that we have this capacity to respect one another, that all opinions matter, whether they're good or bad, but they're opinions. We have the opportunity to be persuasive, but we do that in a very civil way. Again, using that first big piece of civility, which is the opportunity to listen. So one thing that can be done is a cultural assessment. And I have a link in this presentation at the end to a cultural assessment. And these are things, the cultural assessments are something that we really need to consider, particularly if you're, if you're in a workplace, or if there's, things happening within the community. Maybe there's some things that we need to consider about our internal culture, so we can really focus on what it is that we need to take correction, or maybe applaud that we're doing something great. But I think it's really a need for us to do those cultural assessments. Sometimes they can be painful. I'm just putting it out there. These can be very much related to organizational culture. I don't know if you've taken that opportunity to do that. If you have not, I think it's a really great way to kind of get at the heart of, is the library meeting its mission? What is it that we need to do to change? Are we able to put together programming that, is the demographics of our community, really want to be a part of? We have to take this on. A lot of times when I suggest to someone, an organization, maybe you need to do a cultural assessment, there's kind of this, why would I need to do that? Our culture is just fine. And, like, well, tell me more about that. And then sometimes I hear some really great things and sometimes I don't hear much. So just putting a thought out there that keeping in mind then that assessments are not meant to be punitive or to be taken over correction. It is a learning and leaning process. And I think that's the key piece of this. Now, I work in an organization in which we're constantly assessing everything because we need to know. Also, we have to have all sorts of plates spinning, and we need to have a real clear insight into not only the culture of a community, of an organization, but how is it that we can determine what the community may need or what direction they want to go in the, go towards. And we need to be very conscientious of that. And finally, you don't want to shy away from potential difficult conversations or meaningful moments. We all have work to do. And I think that is, one of the most important things that we can think about. And some of those difficult conversations can be painful. They could be, tempers may flare. Hopefully not. That's where civility and respect has to play a key role in this. But it's also an opportunity to get those issues out on the table and to have it discussed in a way that is respectful to all involved and the opportunity to be heard. So another piece of this, and you probably are all familiar with this, but I thought, this is a great place to put this library bill of rights in here because, not only is it appropriate, but I think this is meaningful. This was actually done in 2017, but this is, I think this is a good thing to remind all of us of. I don't want to read this to you verbatim, but it's, where it says that books and other library, there's a word missing there. Other libraries should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people in the community. Again, looking at materials and information preventing all views on current and historical issues. And that material should not be removed because of being proscribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. Again, to me, that's powerful. In which you challenge censorship. And certainly, I'm sure that we all know and heard the stories of multitudes of public libraries, school libraries have books being challenged. We had the one vice principal who read a book to a group of second graders who was dismissed, really focused on censorship. And so, this battle is emerging more and more, and we have to remember that we have to be steady. That libraries cooperate with persons and groups, with resisting abridgment of free expression and free access. Again, that's, this is the heart of what libraries do, and that you don't deny a person's right to use the library because of views, background, origin, or age. And exhibit spaces and meeting rooms are made available. Now, I know that they have to be made available on an equitable basis, but also, I know that also libraries, you don't want to begin inviting in, groups that may, promote hate, for example, or a viewpoint that may not necessarily be welcoming in the community. So what does this mean then for EDI and libraries? That it provides the connection for both community and personal well-being, that lifelong opportunities, learning opportunities, are really the backbone of the community. And I know a lot of times I've heard, backbone is a word that's commonly used in collective impact. We hear it, that libraries want to be the third place in communities. Usually it's church and school being the other two, and how important that is. That libraries are viewed as vital and vibrant, a part of the community with materials and access to the world. and that library mission and vision statements point to a culture of EDI. So if we were to think then about equitable practices and approaches, there's so much information out there on the internet that really help us to kind of figure out what is it that we need to do and see as a part of this. And so this is just a general list. I didn't want to overthink it, but I also want to ensure that you have ideas to share your ideas and approaches to this. So I think the first place to start is to look at those library policies. There may be language that's culturally insensitive. One place that I know that several organizations are looking at, not just libraries, but they're looking at dress codes and other things like that. So to see if there's anything in there that may be, not necessarily, may not be culturally sensitive or culturally approachable. So we need to really take a look at those. Again, take another look at that library mission statement, just to do it to ensure that, that all are welcome, that EDI is present. And it could be very subtle, but I would recommend that you do that. And noting that equality and equity are different, that not all staff may not benefit from the same approach. Communication styles and understanding. Again, just the whole sweep of how individuals react and respond to things that are being said, directions that are being given, opportunities that are provided, to be very mindful of that. That to ensure that the board and staff reflect the demographics of the community or the area served by the library. I think that one seems easy, but it's probably far more difficult than we can imagine it is. That you review programs, displays, artwork, library promotional publications, social media, websites, et cetera, reflect the population served. I think that's a key piece of it. And that's a lot of work to go through all of that. So offer programs that provide opportunities to learn about EDI and to discuss EDI in both board and staff meetings, to be transparent about those intentions. And I'd like to hear from you. Or what are some of the ideas that you do? What are some of the approaches that you have taken on to work in equitable practices? Equitable practices could mean something different to every library. The one that that we have all these designated months for history, right? So right now we're in Women's History Month, so we're seeing a lot of celebrating women, which is fantastic. But the other side of that conversation is, why do women just need a month? Again, we have Black Histories in February. Why do we just need a month for that? Because these are practices that we need to think through, the entire scope of the work that we do. Okay, Amy has said, Amy Byers, I try to look at our policies that don't just say he or she. I try they to be more inclusive. Yeah, that's a great one, Amy. Thank you. That's a good one. That's a practice I think most of us should take on. I've been trying very hard, even in the work that I do, to not point, to or he or a she. I think that's a great thing to think about.
Now, this is like this. This is not so much with policies, but this is more with public service. I know that when I used to work a desk, I would always be excited when I would see people of different races or different colors come in. And, I always try to acknowledge everyone with a smile, but I think I would become even more friendly. And my daughter, who is of a younger generation, and I would also, I don't know, maybe be even more helpful with people. And my daughter pointed out, in some ways, that's again, condescending. It could be interpreted as condescending, or something. What's your opinion of that kind of behavior, where I think I would, maybe be nicer to people of different, backgrounds than my own? Is that good, or is it offensive? Or I'm just kind of confused by that.
That's a great question, Anna. First of all, it's part of just your personality that's what you do. So let's think about that. But I think the reality is that everybody should be treated exactly the same. So that friendly greeting, should be extended to all, not just. And I realize the intention is to be that welcoming person. I love that idea, but some folks may not want to be interested in your bubbliness. But on the other hand, and I also think that it's how you can be, welcoming. And I think that's a really great question to consider, is how is it that we welcome folks to the library? I know when I walk in the Chatham Library, I always get a hello from whoever is seated at the circulation desk. Which, I appreciate that. Sometimes I don't get one. It's because they're busy. So, I think it's whatever you feel most comfortable with, quite frankly. And I'd say, and proceed.
Okay. Yes, I see we do have some comments in the chat. And, Kyla raises some good points.
Yeah, Kyla, about updating bereavement leave policy to extend to unmarried partners, absolutely, or under individuals that are not legally related. I think that is a significant shift. So yeah, thinking about pronouns, thinking about unmarried. Oh, Ashley, they've purchased pronoun pins for our staff lanyards. They are optional to wear, but they are available for all staff members to have and use. Also, when we have board vacancies, we actively approach members in our community that have differing backgrounds, cultures. That's great. Those are great practices. Thank you for sharing them. Yeah, I think, the one thing to keep in mind here too is that some of this will change the work that you do. And remember, change is incremental. You don't want to, what I call, chain whiplash, in which, we're going to change absolutely everything. And then no one knows what is, important. Perhaps it's an overcorrection. So to be very mindful of that as well, particularly when you're examining policies. But it's that opportunity to have those. It's like your example, Anna, thinking about, how am I greeting people? Even it's those spaces and places and actions that we have to take into account of whether or not that is offensive or not. I know one thing that I have had to teach myself over time. I am all about eye contact. Mm-hmm. And I have discovered that there are cultures that simply are uncomfortable with intense eye contact. And so I have had to tell myself just to kind of knock that off. And the good news is that because it took me a while to figure that out, of course. But once I stopped doing the intentional eye contact like I was, because I'm always like, that's my greeting, that's my hello, it's my eye contact. Once I stopped doing that, I discovered that I didn't feel as if that I was being offensive to others. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably very similar to you're smiling more, Anna.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I've been reflecting on this, and why I do that, kind of through all of those filters that you presented in that wonderful wheel. And I think part of it is I spent 4 years working in an organization and in a community where I was the only person of my race and ethnicity. And I had some marvelously kind, helpful, warm, wonderful people. And I think in some ways, when I see people who are different than me, I see all of those kind, wonderful faces from my past. And so I think that kind of adds to it, my response. And, so it's kind of, yeah, again, I'm so grateful for what you're teaching us today, because it's really making me think things on a different and deeper level. And, I appreciate that. And I'm so excited to see the work that Amy and Kyla and Ashley are doing out there to help all of us kind of reframe what we think and make libraries that welcoming place we want them to be.
Right. And that's exactly right. I think there are, opportunities for us within this work that we do to really have these ideas of how is it that we can have, what am I trying to say? How is it that we can be more inclusive? Not just our external practices, but our internal practices. Cassandra has just asked, do you have any suggestions for include, I can never say this word, inclusivity during staff events around the holidays? I know that I've had microaggressions that I didn't mean, it's just thoughtlessness. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, one thing, yeah, and honestly, we struggle with this at our workplace as well, because of holiday events and how some folks don't celebrate in ways that others do. And so we pick a date, and usually it's after everything is done, essentially in January. And that's when we have our holiday gathering. And I'm using air quotes when I'm describing this. We just call it, our annual staff, get together. And that seems to have made a difference. I think that we didn't, it's not necessarily attached to any, religious celebration, that it's really an opportunity for us to celebrate one another. And to be mindful of that. Other ways that we have tried to do this is that we had we've done this several times, is that and this is back in the day when we would have potlucks, which those are, not done these days. But everybody had to bring a dish that best represented their culture. And then we had to describe, how it was a part of our culture. And it was, and again, I have the privilege of working in a multicultural group of folks, and it was fascinating. All right.
Well, I think Cami raises a good point. If you're not from a very diverse environment and you see someone who comes in, and I'm like this too, I always love the exotic or the different, and and of course I always want to know everything about everyone anyway. And I've had like long talks with the Vietnamese person who's doing my fingernails, or so it's kind of like, we've talked about this. It's like part of it is just your own personality, and part of it is like to what level. I always kind of like ask questions, and then if they don't seem interested in it's like I'll ask, what was your life like at home, in your country, or that kind of stuff. And if they're not interested or they seem offended, I back off. But it's like I don't, I really want to know. And it's like I'm just kind of confused as to how do you interact without being offensive? And I know we're going to talk about microaggressions and things in more depth, but it's confusing to me at this point.
And yeah, I think that's a really fair question to ask, and what, because I'm very similarly minded like you, Anna. I want to know more. And, it's that power of curiosity that is so important for all of us. But again, we have to understand culturally that, individuals who we may be having conversations with may have a multitude of reasons for not engaging. It could be, again, it could be a cultural thing. It could be that they, there might be issues in their background, and I shouldn't say issues, but there are circumstances in their background that may promote if I don't want to reveal too much about myself.
Mhm.
And so we have to be very mindful of that. I will say that some of the best conversations that I've had in my life is when I'm in an Uber.
Mhm.
And I have had some hilarious conversations from, and one in particular, I think I was in Las Vegas for a conference, and the Uber, I wanted him to keep driving because we were having such a great conversation, but he was from Africa. I can't remember off the top of my head what country it was, but he had this deep knowledge of the world and how the world worked. And, from a really deep cultural perspective. And I could have listened to him, for, the rest of the time. I told him, and I said, I want to come to your conference sometime, because I think I have a lot more to learn from you than what I'm going to today. But yeah, it's, so you have to take those moments when they present themselves. I don't think you can force those moments. And I think, the more that we think we need to know, the more that we'll find somebody that is willing to tell us, but we have to be patient and wait for it.
Thank you.
All right. And so I felt, because of the way this is going, this is probably this is Maslow's hierarchy of being, in which we have to think about where libraries are within this hierarchy. So Abraham Maslow created this. He actually, let me just say, it was in a cultural appropriation from a Native American tribe who had really developed this earlier, and he saw it. And that one is equally fascinating, but more focused on community. This is focused on individual needs, but we see this whole area, and you're probably used to seeing this. But we see when we look this, we go from physiological needs, i.e. meeting those basic needs in which we seek, comfort and safety, and how we move up this hierarchy to self-actualization, and that is self-described, by the way. I think a lot of times we tend to try to measure this in ways that we may not necessarily see. Perhaps our bias is showing when we're measuring it. But where libraries really, I think, fit into this and push back on this or tell me your ideas. But I think where libraries belong in Maslow's hierarchy is this belongingness. And it really can either launch that pathway to self-actualization or has the opportunity to do that. Certainly, libraries, I've always said libraries are my safe places, but really it's that belonging piece. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. And, libraries are really my small public library in my hometown is where I spent the lion's share of my time, because I really felt as if I belonged there, despite the fact that the librarian was a very old school librarian and was, I think, very suspicious of me. Which did not deter me from going there. And it's really an opportunity to, in terms of, esteem, a feeling of accomplishment. I mean, that's what our summer reading programs are all about, right? And all those adult programs that you offer as well. It's that opportunity. And this way of getting to self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, the library's doors are fully open to that. And it includes creative activities, but it's about being comfortable with self. And it is that opportunity for belonging, which I think libraries are universally engaged in this work. And I don't know if you have thought about this from this perspective, but this is something, I would suggest that maybe you explore this a little bit, to see where is it that you fit into this. I'm going to throw this back to when we looked at the Library Bill of Rights that the ALA put together, in which the definitions came from, the American the Association of Social Workers. This is a tool that we offer quite a bit when we think about how is it that we fit and belong in community. And libraries are that place of belonging. Now, you can push back on that, but I think it would be difficult, because when we read library mission statements, when we think through about what services that are offered to the community for everyone, that in itself is the pure definition of belonging. And so I can't help myself, but so I was looking around for something that kind of would show us in a logical way what libraries offer. And so this is from the Universal Library, which I don't know if that is the Library Association for Great Britain, but this is a slide that I found in a presentation in England. But what was so important about this is that because we are thinking and talking really about societal needs when we're thinking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And see what this says here. And I call this a logic model. So this is something that, that a lot of organizations use, universities use, researchers use, in which we see how we connect the mission to our outcomes. And in the middle are our outputs, what is it that we design? So we'll see here in this logic model, what are the societal needs do libraries meet? And I just loved this language here, where it says connecting communities, improving well-being, and promoting equality through learning, literacy, and cultural participation. And that phrase just threw me out there, because I'm like, that's it. That's, it may not encapsulate everything, but there's language in there that talks about inclusion, that talks about diversity, that talks about acceptance. And so what do libraries do to make that happen? So what's interesting, these are things that you do, right? Reading, information and digital, culture and creativity, and health and well-being. There's a lot of talk certainly in the world today about community well-being, individual well-being. Libraries are a major player in that. And so then it goes on to here's what we offer as this is the outcomes that we can measure. That we improve digital access and literacy, helping everyone achieve their full potential. We just saw Maslow's hierarchy of need. Happier and healthier lives. Cultural and creative enrichment, greater prosperity, increased reading and literacy, stronger and more resilient communities. This is powerful stuff. And I'm going to suggest to all of you that this is probably something that you could think about in your work. If you want to have these conversations and moving towards, you could easily take this model, this logic model, and devise something that really helps you lay out what is our framework for offering EDI to our community, or overall, what is it that we're offering as a library to promote all of these great connections of well-being and promoting equality. So and forgive me, I got really excited when I saw this. And Anna, I have the PowerPoint that this is a part of, and I can certainly send that to you if you want to share it with others.
That would be fantastic, Christine. Thank you.
Yes, I will do that. So I want to end this with a quote from Brené Brown. She is one of my favorite thought leaders in thinking about belonging. And in this image of this library and this quote from her, I think just really summarize the work that you all are doing, which is be here, be you, belong. This library belongs to all of us. And, I applaud your work, your interest in doing this. There's so much more to unpack in this. I would encourage you to, take the time, work with your staff, work with the individuals that use your library to really have these conversations and dig deeper into it, because each community is unique, and the culture within that community, needs to be tended to, and libraries are the perfect place for that. So here's just some resources for you. Some of this, I mentioned the cultural competency assessment. So there is a checklist here. Of course, my work is influenced by Dr. Kendi and his work on how to be an anti-racist, and much of the other work that he's doing. And then I also mentioned my good friend and colleague, the work of Lorena Johnson from the University of Illinois, Springfield. She is retired. She's moved to another community. So now we have emails and phone calls, but she has certainly been my mentor in this work. And then there's more information here about microaggression examples, a great document to read through. I think that really, kind of lays out when we are doing microaggressions. Again, it's an unconscious act for most of us. And then, of course, the website for the logic model that I just showed you. All right, come to an end here. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts to share?
Of course, I have some thoughts to share. I think
Please.
people would be surprised if I didn't. I just want to do a shout out for our libraries, because I think so many of them, regardless of where they're located in our area, I think they do make a conscious effort to make people feel welcome and included when they come to the library. And this is hard work, and it's especially harder now that everything is being challenged, and it's not only books, but people have had issues with programming, and and then coming out of COVID and all of the issues that so many of our directors have had to deal with that. And I think, and yet people have persisted, and they've continued to try to figure out ways to provide these services and do this work that's so needed in spite of all of that. And being a member of the library profession, I want to thank each and every one of you for upholding our reputation and doing such a good job. And yeah, we all have work to do, but I want to say thank you to those of you who are willing to do the work against all of these other challenges. So that's my 2 cents, and I will now open it, stop talking and let other people talk. And, if you want to unmute and say something, feel free.
Yeah, thank you for that, Anna. And yeah, I think the libraries are on the front, if you will, of kind of navigating some of this time in which books and materials are being challenged for many reasons, and that you're studying strong.
Yeah, I always find it amusing when people think that working in a library is an easy job. It's a fun job. It can be intellectually challenging. You can see a lot of good that comes from your work, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's an easy job.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think there's been at least a common perception. Perhaps it's an old perception that perhaps, being a librarian is an easy job. No, absolutely not. Because again, you're placed in the front line of the community. You're serving individuals from a multitude of walks of life, and you have to be that library for every one of them. And that can be very challenging.
Very. Okay, well, if no one has anything they would like to add or ask advice or anything else on, I will let Christine go on with her day. And you have my deepest appreciation for doing this for us, Christine. Both part one and part two, you know, both of the sessions have definitely got me thinking about things on a deeper level. And you've provided us with so many wonderful resources. And I just thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Anna. I appreciate being asked, and it is always my privilege to work with all of you. Libraries and librarians are at the top of my fan list, and I will continue to really enjoy and appreciate, you know, all the good work that you do, not just in your communities, but on how you change the world.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, libraries are pretty darn amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you all.
I guess this brings us to the part of our session where we now do updates. And I'm going to go to Pat Berg at the Illinois State Library for an update of what's happening at the State Library.
Thank you, Anna. Can you all hear me, I hope?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Greetings from the Illinois State Library under the Secretary of State, Jesse White. Just a few things I want to mention, and we'll let you get on to the rest of the comments. Under our grants, our Project Next Generation grant applications are due March 30th. And these grants are for public libraries, and they allow for the establishment of educational programs and hiring mentors to work specifically with middle to high school age students. From STEM to exploring careers, immersive programs may be planned to not only educate and involve students in technologically related projects, but also to promote character development and to improve personal skills such as goal setting or to build self-confidence. So those applications are due for public libraries March 30th. Our Public Library Construction Act grant applications are due April 15th. Mark Schaefer is the lead on this project, and please reach out to him if you have any questions about this. Our public library per capita and equalization aid grant applications are currently being processed. So we hope to have that completed with those calculations very soon. Word letters were recently emailed to school districts for the school district library grant from FY22 appropriations approved by the GA and the governor. School library grants were awarded based on a formula of 88.5 cents per student with a minimum grant award of $850. The school district library grant is used to support the services and programs of the district's library program. Libraries applying for FY23 grants that are funded with federal funds may receive an email requesting their agency's unique entity identifier, or I'm having a hard time spelling this one out, unique entity identifier, or UEI, if it is not currently on file at the Illinois State Library. Since 1988, the federal government, including the Institute of Museum and Library Services, has used a Dun and Bradstreet number, or DUNS, D-U-N-S, to identify and validate agencies receiving federal grant funds, including Library Services and Technology Act monies. The UEI provided through SAM.gov, that's SAM.gov, is positioned to take the place of the DUNS starting in April 2022. If your library is registered in SAM.gov, a UEI has already been assigned to your agency. For those agencies not registered in SAM.gov, their website offers an option to just obtain a UEI without going through the full certification process. The UEI will be required for libraries receiving federal funds, such as LSTA, from the state library. The National Library Service, and by extension, the Talking Book and Braille Service in Illinois, has updated its eligibility standards. While children and adults with a reading disability have previously qualified for services, they were required to have a medical doctor as the certifying authority for eligibility. This change in standards has expanded lists of professionals who may certify eligibility for services to include certified psychologists, educators, certified reading specialists, and school psychologists. This is great news for parents and educators who are seeking additional support services for students who have reading disabilities. Entry forms are now available for the 18th Annual Illinois Emerging Writers Competition Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Award. The competition is named in honor of the late Pulitzer Prize winning Illinois Poet Laureate Gwendolyn Brooks and is co-sponsored by the Illinois Center for the Book and Illinois Poet Laureate Angela Jackson. The competition is open to all Illinois residents age 18 and over. Entries must be postmarked by June 30th, 2022. Cash prizes will be awarded for the first winner, which would be $500, second winner, $300, and third place winner, $100. The entry form is on the State Library's website under the link to the Illinois Center for the Book. Bonnie Mathias is the lead on this project and is the coordinator for the Illinois Center for the Book. Should you have any other questions regarding this competition or any other programs under the Illinois Center for the Book. The final thing is just to kind of remind folks that we do have an e-news letter that comes out periodically, and that will always give you more details about these programs and more topics. And please feel free to contact the State Library anytime you have any questions. Thank you.
Wow, that's a lot of information, Pat. Thank you very much. And yes, I'm looking forward to the next newsletter from the State Library because I'm sure it'll have much more information there too. I had read about the change to the UEI designation previously, and so I'm glad to hear more information about that. Thank you, Pat.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
The next person we will ask to speak is the IHLS Director, Leslie Bednar.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I hope you can. I want to thank everybody, especially Christine, for her presentation. I got in just on the end of it, but I can't wait to see the recording of her session. IHLS is at a place that I personally really like, because right now what we're doing is developing our budget proposal and our operational plan proposal for FY 2023. Those have to be approved by our board generally at our May board meeting. So the board will see a first read of both at the April committee and board meetings, and then a final read and a vote at the May board meeting. We are meeting internally actually today to review our operational plan. It's a read through. So kind of think of everybody sitting around a big Zoom table and talking about what they all have in mind for their departments for the next fiscal year. So, and we'll be posting that information for member comment, I believe sometime in April, although I don't have the exact date, where members can take a look at both the op plan and the budget. And we do definitely want member feedback on both of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Our next speaker will be Cassandra for share.
Thank you, Anna. So I have just a few announcements for our share members. One is actually kind of along the lines of this topic. We are offering some new group purchases, and we'll be sending out information in the next few weeks. We recently had some demos on a new product from Baker & Taylor through their Collection HQ to do an EDI analysis on your collection. And so with that, you can use that tool to analyze your information along with publisher data, MARC records, and different types of data to analyze the collection, how it's meeting the needs of the community. And so we are offering that, and we will be making that available to members as a group purchase. It is, at this point, we don't have the expertise on our staff to help you utilize the tool. So it is something that you'd need to have staff that is familiar with doing the collection analysis to actually utilize the data. But we are going to continue working on that on our end. But at this first initial point, we do want to make it available and make sure you get a good discount if it's a tool that you're interested in using. And so we will have some signups for that. And I will be happy to enter that in the chat after I finish my update. And so with that, we'll also, if you missed the demo and you're still interested in learning more, we do have a recording. We'll be sending that out again in the next couple of weeks. I'm also really excited to announce that we're going to offer a new program through McNaughton Book Leasing so that you have an opportunity to purchase there's two separate plans, a small plan and a large plan. And so the small plan is 5 books per month, 60 books per year, with a large plan of 10 books per month and 120 books per year. The cost of this program is about $20 per book. It comes fully processed. It will come fully cataloged. It will not need to even do the barcoding. It's going to come to IHLS Hubs. That's where we're getting our savings of having it shipped to one location. We'll send it out to you in delivery. And when it gets to you, there may be a street date, but otherwise it's ready to hit your shelves and hit for some holds. So we're going to have a demo on that on the 30th. And again, we'll be sending out recordings and additional information if you are interested. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So sorry about that. With that, we will have some signups for that. We're going to start the program. It will be an annual fee starting in July. And so they're actually going to start doing some of the selection for us in April. So we're going to have a lot of information available and frequently asked questions. Again, that recording and some signups. So if it's something you're interested in, please keep an eye out because we will be providing that information. And then I have some really exciting news. We are coming up on the Share's 10-year birthday. And so we are going to be having a party, a virtual party on Monday, April 4th. It's just, it happens that that is also the same day we're kicking off Library Week. This is going to be fun. And so I do invite you all to come and have a little bit of silliness in your day. Come join us and really celebrate the community that we have built with Share. And so we're really excited to have you all participate in that. There'll be lots of fun, lots of prizes. And so that's all I have for on my end. I do want to open it up. I don't know if we have any other Share staff that maybe I've missed something that they'd like to jump in, if we have anybody that has anything that they'd like to add. Okay, and I'll turn it back over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Cassandra. Again, a lot of information, and very exciting authors and projects. So now I'm going to ask Danielle to talk about communications and what's happening there.
Hello, everyone. So we do not have much of an update regarding marketing and communications. However, I did want to highlight that we are doing another set of library human resource webinar series for, I believe this is the 3rd year in a row with HR Source. So registration is currently open. There will be one session in April, one in May, and one in June, and space is limited. So I definitely encourage you to check it out and see if that is something that you are interested in doing, then to go ahead and get registered. I'll pop the link in the chat to the page for more information. So the cost of sessions through HR Source range anywhere from $35 to $250, and they are at a much lower cost if you're an IHLS member library. So we definitely encourage you to check it out and get registered if you're interested in any of the sessions. And that's it. That's all I have for today. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you. I'm not sure who will be speaking for delivery or if anyone's planning on speaking for delivery. I know Linda Petty was here earlier. Are you still around, Linda? Okay. I guess not. I know that Delivery is very excited about dogs, which is delivery on the go. And there will be more information about that, and there will be, more promotional stuff going out. So keep your eyes open for that. I know that in the Champaign hub, this is a concept. It's not a new concept, but it's a concept that we're trying to revive and get more people to participate in. And I know at the Champaign hub, many of the libraries have been doing this for quite a while. So they're just trying to get those of us in the Edwardsville and the Carbondale hubs to be aware of this service and to kind of speed materials along using this process. So again, there will be more information coming out about that. Now it's membership time, and I don't know whether Ellen would appreciate me telling you this, but I'm just so excited. Her daughter is having her baby right now, and it's going to be a St. Patrick's Day baby, so that's very exciting. We're all working on making sure that all of our member libraries complete the ILL traffic survey, and also to certify. I know some people have completed the traffic survey, but have not done certification. And certification is really pretty easy. And all you have to do is go to L2, and it'll tell you if you're the person who's been designated to complete the certification. So I have sent emails out so you can check your spam if you have not heard from me and you still have not completed it, but you can expect a call soon too. So I know you all love hearing from me, but I would appreciate it if you guys would, complete those two things as soon as possible. And I think that's all the nagging I'm going to do. I see Leah is with us, and I'm not sure if Leah has anything to add or anything she would like to share, but take it away, Leah.
Can you hear me? I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to say hi, and please complete your certification, everyone.
Yes, we're the naggers, the nagging sisters,
I've been emailing everybody today, and if they complete their certification, I send them a note and say, okay, now it's your turn to nag me for anything you need. So we're always here.
That's right.
Just hear more from us at this time of year.
I love that turnaround is fair play kind of attitude too. Yes, we love to hear from you guys and to help you in any way we can. So I guess that's it from our membership roundup. So I am going to ask if anyone would like to share any information about their library and what's happening, or if there's anything exciting you'd like to share. Just a reminder, we will not have the director's chat this afternoon. Usually when we have members matter, we do not do the director's chat in the afternoon. We're hoping that a lot of the things will have been covered in this meeting. So, and also, usually by the time we're done with this, we're kind of tired. So I'm not sure you can get the best of us in a chat. But anyway, please, if anyone has anything they would like to add, feel free to put anything in chat, or you can unmute yourself and share that way. I'll give it a few minutes and see what happens. I feel like I should have that dramatic music or something. Flight of the Bumblebee, as people, we're waiting to hear, or, that a TikTok kind of thing, the sound of a clock, or I don't know. Jeopardy music. Yes, Leah's right. Okay, not hearing anything or seeing anything in chat. I am going to bring this session to a close, and you have an extra half hour in your day to go out and enjoy the beautiful weather. So thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed your time here and you got some good tips and have learned things. And Christine has already shared her slide deck. So when this makes it to, when the recording is posted, I will send out a link to the recording and the slide deck at the same time. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye.